On October 18, 2021, in a cardiac unit in Nashville, Tennessee, I died for 11 minutes. I remember the beeping first, that steady mechanical rhythm that had been keeping time with my heartbeat for 3 days. And then I remember it going flat. One long, endless tone that seemed to stretch out forever. I was 62 years old. I had been a deacon at Cornerstone Baptist Church for 17 years. Before that, I served on the worship team for a decade. I knew the Bible front to back. I could quote Romans, recite Psalms, and I taught Sunday school to the men's group every other week. If you had asked anyone at my church who was getting into heaven, they would have said my name without hesitation. I would have said it too. I thought heaven was guaranteed for people like me. I knew all the right verses. I sang all the right songs. I prayed before meals. I tithed faithfully. I showed up every Sunday without fail. I had my theology straight. I knew salvation was by grace, not works. I knew Jesus died for my sins. I had said the sinner's prayer when I was 9 years old at Vacation Bible School, and I meant it. So when my heart stopped that Tuesday afternoon, when the pain shot down my left arm and my chest felt like it was being crushed in a vice, when I hit the floor of that hospital room and everything went dark, I wasn't afraid. I expected to step straight into glory. I expected angels. I expected peace. I expected Jesus to greet me with open arms and say, "Well done, good and faithful servant." That's not what happened. The first thing I felt was falling. Not physically falling, but falling through something. Through a darkness that wasn't just the absence of light. It was the absence of everything. No sound, no air, no sense of up or down, just falling. And then I heard my name. Not shouted, not whispered, just spoken. Clear as day. Clearer than anything I'd ever heard in my life. Daniel. It was Jesus. I knew it was him before I saw him. I can't explain how, but I knew. And the moment I heard my name, everything stopped. The falling stopped. The darkness pulled back like a curtain. And then I saw him. He was standing in front of me, and the light that came from him wasn't like sunlight or firelight. It was pure. It was alive. It was so bright I should have had to look away, but I couldn't. I didn't want to. I wanted to run to him. I wanted to fall at his feet. I wanted to weep with joy because I'd made it. I was home. But then he looked at me, and I saw something in his eyes that made my soul go cold. It wasn't anger. It wasn't disappointment. It was something worse. It was sorrow. He didn't say anything at first. He just looked at me. And as he looked, I felt something happening inside me. It was like my entire life was being opened up. Every moment, every thought, every word I'd ever spoken, every secret I'd ever kept. And then he spoke again. "Daniel, do you know why you're here?" I tried to answer. I tried to say, "Because I'm saved, because I accepted you, because I believed." But the words wouldn't come. Because the moment he asked that question, I saw it. I saw the hidden things. I saw the website I visited late at night when my wife was asleep. I saw the way I looked at women who weren't my wife. I saw the anger I held on to against my brother for 20 years. I saw the gossip I disguised as prayer requests. I saw the pride I wrapped in humility. I saw the money I gave to the church while I ignored the homeless man outside the gas station. I saw every time I said, "I'll pray for you," and then never did. I saw the version of myself I had hidden from everyone, even from myself. And Jesus saw it too. He had always seen it. "I called you Lord," I finally whispered. "I believed in you." He nodded slowly. And when he spoke, his voice was gentle, but it cut deeper than any sword. "You called me Lord, Daniel, but did you ever let me be Lord?" I didn't understand, not yet. But what he showed me next completely destroyed the way I saw my own Christianity. Let me take you back to who I was before that hospital room. If you had walked into Cornerstone Baptist on any given Sunday, you would have seen me in the third row, right side. Same spot for 27 years. I was always early. I shook hands with the newcomers. I knew everyone's name. I served coffee before the service and stayed late to stack chairs afterward. People at church called me a pillar of faith. I was a deacon. I led the men's Bible study on Wednesday nights. I taught Sunday school. I was on the missions committee and the building fund committee. When someone needed prayer, they called me. When someone needed help moving, they called me. When the pastor needed an extra hand, I was the first one to volunteer. I tithed faithfully. 15%, not just 10. I made sure people knew that too. Not in a boastful way, I thought, just as an encouragement. I prayed before every meal, even in restaurants. I kept my Bible on my desk at work. I had a fish sticker on my car and a cross hanging from my rearview mirror. I was the guy who could quote scripture in any conversation. Someone mentions fear, Philippians 4:13. Someone's going through a hard time, Romans 8:28. Someone questions God's plan, Jeremiah 29:11. I had an answer for everything. From the outside, I looked like exactly what a Christian should look like. But here's what I didn't realize until Jesus showed me. I didn't serve God because I loved him. I served God because I loved the way it made me feel when people noticed. I was addicted to approval. Every time I taught a Bible study, I would watch people's faces. I wanted to see them nod. I wanted to see them take notes. And after the service, I would linger in the hallway, waiting for someone to tell me how much they got out of it. If someone did, I'd feel full for days. If no one said anything, I'd go home feeling empty. I didn't realize that's what I was doing. I thought I was just being faithful. But it wasn't about faithfulness. It was about me. When people praised me, I'd say, oh, it's all God. But inside I was glowing. I was keeping score. I was comparing myself to other men in the church. I noticed when someone else got asked to pray in front of the congregation instead of me. I noticed when the pastor thanked someone else from the pulpit. I told myself it didn't bother me, but it did. At home, things were different. My wife, Karen, she'd try to talk to me about something she was feeling, something she was struggling with, and I'd turn it into a teaching moment. I'd pull out a verse. I'd give her a 3-point sermon about faith or trust or submission. She stopped trying after a while. One night, maybe 5 years before I died, she said something I'll never forget. We were sitting at the kitchen table. I'd just come home from a Deacon's meeting that ran late. She'd made dinner hours earlier and it was sitting cold on the stove. She wasn't angry, she just looked tired. She said, Daniel, you care more about the people at church than you do about your own family. I got defensive immediately. I told her that wasn't fair. I told her I was doing the Lord's work. I told her that ministry required sacrifice and that she, of all people, should understand that. She didn't say anything. She just looked at me for a long moment, and then she got up and went to bed. I convinced myself she was wrong, but deep down, in a place I didn't want to look, I knew she wasn't. My son Tyler, he was 16 at the time. He'd stopped coming to church the year before, said he didn't believe anymore, said it all felt fake. I tried everything. I sat him down for long talks. I gave him books to read. I prayed over him every night, whether he wanted me to or not. But every conversation turned into a sermon. Every question he asked, I had a verse for. I thought I was guiding him. I thought I was being a good father. One day he looked at me and said, Dad, I can't talk to you. You don't listen. You just preach. I told him that Scripture was alive and active, sharper than any two-edged sword, and that I was speaking truth into his life. He walked out of the room. He barely spoke to me after that. I told myself it was spiritual warfare. I told myself he was being deceived by the world. I prayed that God would bring him back. But I never once asked him what he was actually feeling. I never once just sat with him in silence and listened. I thought that would be enabling his doubt. I thought my job was to correct him. And then there were the things I didn't let anyone see. Late at night, after Karen went to bed, I'd sit in the living room with my laptop. I told myself I was checking email, checking the news, doing research for my next Bible study. But that's not what I was doing. I'd go to websites I knew I shouldn't. I'd look at things I knew were wrong. And every time I'd feel this wave of shame afterward. I'd close the laptop and promise God I wouldn't do it again. But I always did. I'd justify it. I'd tell myself it wasn't that bad. I'd tell myself it wasn't like I was committing adultery. It was just looking, just pixels on a screen, just a release of stress. I called it a struggle. I called it a thorn in my flesh like Paul had. I never called it what it was, sin. And it wasn't just that. There was the way I talked about other people at church. I never called it gossip. I called it concern. I'd say, we need to pray for so-and-so, and then I'd list all the ways they were failing. I'd say, I'm worried about so-and-so, and then I'd share details about their life that weren't mine to share. I felt spiritual doing it, like I was bearing their burdens, but I wasn't. I was feeding my own ego by tearing someone else down. There was the money, too. Small things. A few dollars here and there from the petty cash at work. I'd tell myself I'd pay it back. I never did. I'd adjust the numbers on my expense reports. Nothing major, just enough to cover a lunch or a tank of gas. I tithed 15%. What did a few dollars matter? There was the anger I held on to. My brother and I hadn't spoken in 20 years. He'd said something at a family gathering that I took as disrespect. I can't even remember what it was now. But I held on to it. I nursed it. I told myself I'd forgiven him, but I hadn't. I just buried it. Every time his name came up, I'd feel this cold knot in my chest. I told myself I was justified. And then there were the moments when I knew better, when the Holy Spirit was tugging at my heart, trying to get my attention, and I brushed him off. I remember one Sunday morning the pastor preached on lukewarm Christianity. He read from Revelation 3. Because you are lukewarm, neither hot nor cold, I will spit you out of my mouth. I felt something stir in my chest while he was preaching. This uncomfortable, convicting feeling, like someone was shining a light into a corner of my heart I didn't want to look at. But I pushed it away. I told myself, this message is for other people. I'm not lukewarm. I'm here every Sunday. I serve. I give. I pray. I went home that afternoon and forgot all about it. That's what I did. Every time the Holy Spirit nudged me, I'd rationalize it. I'd redirect it. I'd convince myself that I was fine. I had my theology right. I knew the right answers. I believed in Jesus. What else mattered? The truth is, I thought those little things didn't count. I thought as long as I believed the right things and said the right prayers and showed up to church, everything else was just normal Christian struggle. I thought grace covered it all, so I didn't need to actually deal with it. I truly believed those little things didn't matter. I had no idea that in heaven, nothing small stays small. It started on a Tuesday afternoon. I was in the cardiac unit at Vanderbilt Medical Center. I'd been there for 3 days already. They'd run tests, EKG, stress tests, blood work. The doctors kept saying the same thing. We need to monitor you, just to be safe. I wasn't worried. I'd had chest pain before. Stress, they said. Anxiety. I was 62. It happened. That afternoon, I was sitting up in bed, flipping through channels on the TV mounted to the wall. Karen had gone downstairs to get coffee. The nurse had just checked my vitals. Everything was stable. And then it wasn't. The pain started in the center of my chest. Just a dull pressure at first, like someone pressing their fist against my sternum. I'd felt it before. I took a slow breath and waited for it to pass. It didn't pass. The pressure got tighter, heavier, and then it spread, down my left arm, up into my jaw. It felt like something inside me was being squeezed in a vise. I reached for the call button. That's when the pain went from a dull pressure to a knife. It was sharp, sudden, like something had torn open inside my chest. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't speak. I just gripped the bed rail and tried to pull air into my lungs, but nothing was working. The monitor next to me started beeping. Fast, erratic beeps that didn't match the rhythm of my heartbeat anymore. And then the beeping stopped. It went to one long, flat tone. I heard footsteps, running, shouting. The door to my room slammed open and nurses poured in. Someone was yelling codes I didn't understand. Someone else was pulling my bed flat. I felt hands on my chest, pressing down hard. I wanted to tell them I was okay. I wanted to tell them to stop, but I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. And then something strange started to happen. The noise in the room started to fade. Not all at once, gradually, like someone was slowly turning down the volume on everything around me. The voices got quieter. The alarms got distant. Even the sensation of hands pressing on my chest started to feel far away, like it was happening to someone else. I could still see everything. The fluorescent lights above me, the faces of the nurses leaning over me. One of them was counting out loud. 30 compressions, 2 breaths. 30 compressions, 2 breaths. But I didn't feel it anymore. The pain was gone, completely gone. And that's when I realized I wasn't in my body anymore. I don't know how to explain it. I was still there, in the room, but I wasn't in the bed. I was above it, floating, hovering near the ceiling, looking down at everything happening below me. I could see myself lying on the bed. My chest was bare. There were wires attached to my skin. A nurse was doing compressions, pushing down hard on my sternum with both hands. Another nurse was squeezing a bag connected to a tube in my mouth, forcing air into my lungs. My face looked gray. My eyes were half open, but there was nothing behind them. I looked dead, and I was. I saw Karen come back into the room. She was holding a styrofoam cup of coffee in one hand, and the moment she saw what was happening, she dropped it. The coffee spilled across the floor in a dark, spreading pool, but she didn't notice. She just stood there, frozen, her hand covering her mouth. One of the nurses tried to pull her back out into the hallway, but she wouldn't move. She just kept staring at me, at my body, tears streaming down her face. I wanted to tell her I was okay. I wanted to reach out and touch her shoulder and say, "I'm right here. I'm fine." But I couldn't. Because I wasn't fine. Not really. Something was pulling me. I felt it before I saw it. A sensation in the center of my chest, or where my chest used to be. It wasn't painful. It was just persistent, like a gentle tug, like someone had tied a string around my ribs and was slowly pulling me backward. I tried to resist it. I tried to stay in the room, but I couldn't. The hospital started to fade. The walls, the lights, the people, all of it just dissolved into a soft gray mist, and I was moving. Not walking, not flying, just moving, being pulled. And then I saw it, the tunnel. I know how that sounds. I know everyone talks about the tunnel. I used to hear those stories and think they were made up, or exaggerated, or the brain playing tricks in the final moments before death. But it's real. It wasn't like a subway tunnel or a cave. It wasn't dark. It was more like I was moving through a space that didn't have walls but still had shape. The edges were soft and undefined, like smoke or fog. And there was light ahead of me. Not bright, not blinding, just a warm golden glow in the distance. I wasn't afraid. That's the part that surprised me the most. I should have been terrified. I just died. I just left my body behind. I was moving through some kind of void toward an unknown destination. But I felt calm, peaceful even. Everything I'd been carrying, all the stress, all the tension, all the weight of life, it was just gone. I felt light, free. I didn't hear anything, no voices, no music, just silence. A deep, complete silence that didn't feel empty. It felt full, like the silence was alive somehow. And I kept moving. The light ahead of me got brighter, warmer. It wasn't harsh or uncomfortable. It was inviting, welcoming, like standing in front of a fireplace on a cold winter night. I thought, this is it. This is heaven. I'm going home. I expected angels. I expected trumpets. I expected the gates of pearl and streets of gold, just like I'd always been taught. And then at the end of that tunnel, I stepped into a garden that no human language can fully describe. The first thing I noticed wasn't what I saw. It was what I felt. The air. I know that sounds strange, but the air in that place was different. It wasn't just oxygen. It was alive. Every breath I took felt like I was breathing in pure love, pure peace, pure joy. It filled my lungs and spread through my entire body like warmth. But it wasn't heat. It was something else, something I'd never felt before. I didn't feel heavy anymore. I didn't feel tired. I didn't feel the ache in my knees or the stiffness in my back that I'd carried for years. I felt whole. And then I opened my eyes fully. I was standing in a garden. But calling it a garden doesn't do it justice. It's like calling the ocean a puddle. The words we have on earth, they're not enough. The grass beneath my feet wasn't just green. It was more than green. It was alive with color, like every blade was glowing from the inside. And when I looked closer, I could see that the blades weren't still. They were moving, swaying, not because of wind, but because they were responding to something, to the light maybe, or to the presence of God himself. I reached down and touched the grass, and the moment my hand made contact, I felt it. Not just the texture. I felt the life in it. I felt it rejoicing. I know how that sounds, but I'm telling you what I experienced. The trees were beyond anything I'd ever seen. They stood tall and strong, their trunks wide and ancient looking, but their leaves were shimmering. Gold and silver and green all at once, shifting and changing with every movement. And the fruit hanging from the branches looked so perfect, so ripe, that I could almost taste it just by looking at it. There was a river flowing through the garden. I could hear it before I saw it. The sound of water moving over stones, but it wasn't just water. It was crystal clear. So clear I could see all the way to the bottom, even though it looked deep. And the light was coming from the water itself. It was glowing, radiating, like the river was made of liquid light. I walked toward it, and as I got closer, I saw that the stones in the riverbed weren't gray or brown. They were colored, reds and blues and purples, all smooth and polished, and they sparkled like jewels. The colors in that place, I can't even begin to describe them. We don't have those colors on Earth. I saw shades I'd never seen before, colors that don't have names. And they weren't just sitting there static. They were moving, breathing, alive. The flowers along the path were blooming in ways that seemed impossible. Some of them were as tall as I was, with petals that opened and closed slowly, like they were inhaling and exhaling. Others were small and delicate, clustered together in groups, and when I looked at them, I swear they turned toward me, like they knew I was there, like they were welcoming me. And the fragrance, oh, the fragrance. It wasn't overpowering. It wasn't like walking into a perfume store. It was subtle and sweet, and it changed as I moved. One moment it smelled like fresh rain, the next like honeysuckle, then like something I'd never smelled before but somehow recognized, deep in my soul. Everything in that garden was worshiping. I didn't understand it at first, but then I felt it. The trees, the flowers, the grass, the river, even the light itself, they were all singing. Not with voices, not with sound the way we understand it, but they were singing nonetheless, praising God. And I could feel it. I could feel their joy, their gratitude, their pure, unfiltered adoration of the Creator. And then I heard the music. I didn't hear it with my ears, I felt it. It moved through me. It was inside me and outside me at the same time. It was like every cell in my body was vibrating in harmony with something infinitely larger than myself. There were no instruments, or maybe there were instruments, but they weren't like anything on earth. The music wasn't coming from one place. It was coming from everywhere, from the air, from the ground, from the light. It was the most beautiful thing I've ever experienced. And I'd been in church my whole life. I'd sung 10,000 hymns. I'd heard orchestras and choirs and worship bands. But nothing on earth comes close to the music in heaven. It wasn't just beautiful, it was truth. It was love. It was the very essence of God poured out in sound and rhythm and melody. And I wanted to join in. I opened my mouth to sing, and the moment I did, I realized I wasn't singing alone. My voice blended with the music around me, and it was perfect. I'd never been able to carry a tune on earth, but here I could sing. And it wasn't just my voice, it was my whole being. My soul was singing. I don't know how long I stood there. Time didn't work the same way. It felt like hours and seconds all at once. And then I saw him, the angel. I didn't hear him approach, he was just suddenly there, standing a few feet away from me on the path. He was tall, taller than any man I'd ever seen. And he was radiant. Not glowing like a light bulb, it was more like light was coming from within him, spilling out through his skin, his eyes, his very presence. But it didn't hurt to look at him. It wasn't blinding. It was gentle, warm. He didn't speak out loud, not at first, but I heard him, in my mind, in my spirit. Welcome, Daniel. I didn't ask him how he knew my name, I just knew that he knew, that he'd always known. I tried to speak, but the words caught in my throat. I was overwhelmed by the beauty, by the peace, by the sheer magnitude of where I was. Am I really here? I finally managed to say. He smiled, and when he smiled, it was like the light around us got brighter. You are standing in the presence of the Lord. My knees almost gave out. The weight of those words, the reality of them, it hit me all at once. I was in heaven. I was actually in heaven. I wanted to fall down. I wanted to weep. I wanted to shout. I didn't know what to do. The angel reached out and placed a hand on my shoulder, and the moment he did, I felt strength flow into me. Not physical strength, something deeper, like courage, like reassurance. Come, he said. He is waiting for you. We started walking together down the path. The trees formed a kind of canopy overhead, their branches intertwining, and the light filtered through the leaves in golden beams that danced on the ground. I wanted to stop and look at everything. I wanted to touch every flower, every stone, every blade of grass. I wanted to kneel by the river and drink from it. I wanted to stay in that garden forever. But the angel kept walking, and I followed. As we walked, I noticed other beings in the distance. Angels, I assumed. Some were walking. Some were standing in groups. Some seemed to be tending to the garden, though I don't think anything there needed tending. They all had that same radiance, that same sense of peace. And then I saw people. Not many, just a few, far off near the edge of the garden. They were dressed in white, and they looked so joyful, so free. I couldn't see their faces clearly, but I could feel their happiness. It radiated from them. I wondered if I knew any of them. I wondered if my parents were there, my grandparents, friends from church who'd passed away. But before I could ask, the angel stopped walking. We were standing in front of a clearing. The trees opened up into a wide circular space filled with the most incredible light I'd ever seen. It wasn't coming from the sky, it was coming from the center of the clearing. And in that light I saw a figure. I couldn't make out details, not yet, but I knew who it was. I knew it in my bones, in my soul. It was Jesus. The angel stepped aside and looked at me. "He is calling you," he said softly. And then I heard it, my name, Daniel. It wasn't loud, it wasn't a shout, it was gentle, tender, but it went through me like a shockwave. It moved through my chest, my mind, my spirit. It shook me to my core. When he said my name, it wasn't just a word. It was every moment of my life, every memory, every choice, every thought, every secret. It was like he was speaking to the deepest part of me, the part I'd hidden from everyone, even from myself. Daniel, he said it again, and this time I felt something else. Exposure. Suddenly, every little sin I had ever hidden, every compromise I had ever made, every lie I had ever told myself, it all woke up. And I realized with a terror I can't describe that I was about to stand before the one who sees everything. I took a step forward, toward the light, toward him. And the moment I did, everything changed. The garden didn't disappear. The light didn't fade. But suddenly, surrounding me in every direction, scenes from my life began to appear. Not on screens, not like watching a movie. It was like I was standing inside my own memories, like I could reach out and touch them, like I was there again, living them, but also watching them from the outside at the same time. It started with my childhood. I saw myself as a boy, maybe 8 or 9 years old, sitting in a Sunday school classroom. I was singing "Jesus Loves Me" with the other kids, my hands folded in my lap, my eyes closed tight. I looked so innocent, so sincere, and I was. I meant it back then. I really did love Jesus. But then the scene shifted. I was 16, sitting in my bedroom. My parents thought I was doing homework, but I was looking at a magazine I'd hidden under my mattress. I saw the shame on my face even as I flipped through the pages. I saw the way I quickly shoved it back into its hiding place when I heard footsteps in the hallway. I'd forgotten about that, or I thought I had. I'd buried it so deep that it felt like it had never happened. But here it was, clear as day, and I felt it again. The guilt, the shame, the thrill and the disgust all mixed together. The scenes kept coming, faster now, one after another. I saw my wedding day, Karen in her white dress, smiling at me as we stood at the altar. I saw the way I promised to love her, to honor her, to cherish her, for better or worse, till death do us part. And then I saw the night, maybe 10 years into our marriage, when she tried to talk to me about how lonely she felt. We were sitting on the couch. The kids were in bed. The house was quiet. She said, "Daniel, I feel like I'm losing you." I saw myself barely look up from the notes I was preparing for the men's Bible study the next morning. I saw the way I waved her off. "Karen, I'm busy. We can talk later." But we never did. I watched her sit there for another moment, waiting, hoping I'd put the notes down and actually listen. And when I didn't, I watched her stand up, her shoulders sagging, and walk upstairs alone. And then, suddenly, I wasn't just watching anymore. I felt it. I felt her loneliness, her sadness, the ache in her chest as she climbed the stairs. The way she lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I even loved her anymore. It hit me like a freight train. The weight of her pain, the depth of her isolation, it crashed into me and I doubled over. I wanted to scream. I wanted to reach into that memory and shake myself. I wanted to say, "Put the notes down, she needs you." But I couldn't. I could only feel it, all of it. The scene shifted again. I was in the kitchen with my son, Tyler. He was 14. He'd just gotten a bad grade on a test and he was trying to explain why. He was stammering, nervous, his eyes darting around the room, looking anywhere but at me. Dad, I tried. I didn't understand the material, and I was afraid to ask the teacher for help, and I saw myself cut him off. You didn't try hard enough. If you'd spent less time on that video game and more time studying, this wouldn't have happened. I saw the way his face fell, the way his jaw tightened, the way he looked down at the floor and nodded. Yes, sir. He didn't argue. He just took it. And then he walked out of the kitchen and went to his room. And then I felt it. I felt his shame, his fear, the way my words made him feel small, worthless, like he could never be good enough for me, like no matter what he did, it would never be enough. I felt the wall that went up between us in that moment, a wall I had built with my own words, and I wept. I'm telling you, I wept like I'd never wept before, because I saw it now. I saw what I'd done. Not just in that moment, but in 100 other moments just like it. I saw the way I'd used Scripture as a weapon, the way I'd turned every conversation into a sermon, the way I'd cared more about being right than about being present. The scene shifted again. I was at church, standing in the hallway after the service, talking to another deacon. We were discussing a member of the congregation who'd been struggling, a man who'd lost his job and was falling behind on his bills. I heard myself say, well, if he'd managed his finances better, he wouldn't be in this mess. You reap what you sow. I saw the other deacon nod in agreement. And then the scene expanded, and I saw that man. I saw him sitting in his car in the church parking lot, crying, because he'd just overheard what I said. I saw the humiliation on his face, the way he felt judged, condemned, not by God, but by me. And I felt it. I felt his pain, his shame, his sense of abandonment. I had called it sharing concerns. I had called it being honest. I had called it speaking the truth in love. Heaven called it gossip. The scenes kept coming, one after another, relentless. I saw the times I'd lied, little lies. I'll pray for you, when I had no intention of praying. I'm fine, when I wasn't. I forgot, when I simply didn't care enough to remember. I saw the times I judged, looked down on people who didn't have their lives together, dismissed people who didn't share my theology, written off people who didn't meet my standards. I saw the times I'd been greedy, kept money for myself that I could have given to someone in need, spent money on things I didn't need while people around me were struggling. I saw the times I'd been angry, held grudges, refused to forgive, let bitterness fester in my heart for years. And with every scene, I felt the impact. I felt the pain I'd caused, the wounds I'd inflicted, the damage I'd done. It was unbearable. And then I saw the hidden things, the things no one else knew about. I saw the late nights on the computer, the images I'd looked at, the fantasies I'd entertained, the lust I'd fed in secret. I saw the pride, the way I'd compared myself to others and felt superior, the way I'd enjoyed being seen as spiritual, the way I'd craved recognition and validation. I saw the hypocrisy, the way I'd preached forgiveness but refused to forgive my brother, the way I'd taught humility but lived in arrogance, the way I'd spoken about grace but extended none to the people in my own life. And as I watched, I saw something else. The sins I thought were small, the sins I'd dismissed as normal struggles. They weren't small here. They had weight. They had substance. They had form. They clung to me like living shadows, dark, writhing shapes that wrapped around my arms, my chest, my throat. I could feel them, cold and heavy and suffocating. I tried to shake them off, but I couldn't. They were mine. I had created them. I had fed them. I had carried them. And now they were choking me. I fell to my knees. I couldn't stand anymore. The weight of it all, the shame, the guilt, the realization of what I'd done, it was crushing me. I wanted to disappear. I wanted to cease to exist. I couldn't bear it. I couldn't bear the truth of who I really was. And then I heard his voice. Daniel. It was gentle, so gentle. I couldn't look up. I couldn't face him. Not after what I'd just seen. Not after what had just been exposed. But he spoke again. These things were small to you, but they were heavy to the hearts you wounded. I felt a sob tear through my chest. You thought I didn't see the private places of your heart, he continued, but I have always seen, and I have always loved you. I shook my head. How can you love me after everything I've done, after all the ways I've failed? There was a pause, a long, heavy pause, and then he said something that broke me even further. You called me Lord, Daniel, but you never let me be Lord. You built your own kingdom. You wore my name. You spoke my words, but your heart was far from me. It was true. Every word of it was true. I had used Jesus. I had used him to build my reputation, to feel good about myself, to be admired by others. But I had never truly surrendered to him. I had never truly let him into the broken, hidden places of my soul. I had been a Christian in name, but not in truth. And in that unbearable exposure, as I knelt there surrounded by the evidence of my sin, I realized something. He was not trying to destroy me. He was trying to free me. I don't know how long I stayed on my knees. Time didn't exist there the way it does here. It could have been seconds. It could have been hours. All I know is that I was broken, completely broken, shattered into 1,000 pieces. And then I felt his hand on my shoulder. It was warm, solid, real. I looked up, and for the first time I saw his face clearly. I can't describe it fully. I don't have the words. His face was both human and divine. I could see the lines of suffering around his eyes, the marks of the cross still visible in his expression. But there was also something beyond human, a radiance, a glory, a depth that went on forever. His eyes saw everything, every sin, every failure, every secret, every dark corner of my soul. But they weren't cold. They weren't condemning. They were full of love, overwhelming, relentless, infinite love. I started to weep again, not out of shame this time, out of something else, something I'd never felt before. It was gratitude, mixed with sorrow, mixed with relief all at once. Lord, I whispered, I thought I was serving you. My voice cracked. I could barely get the words out. I thought I was doing everything right. I went to church, I read my Bible, I prayed, I served, I gave. I thought that was enough. He didn't respond right away, he just looked at me. And in his gaze I saw understanding. Not agreement, but understanding. I didn't know, I continued. I didn't know my heart was this hard. I didn't know I was hurting people. I didn't know I was so blind. The tears kept coming, I couldn't stop them. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. And then he spoke. Daniel, you served me with your schedule, but not with your heart. His voice wasn't harsh. It wasn't angry, but it cut deeper than any rebuke I'd ever received. You knew all the right words, he continued. You knew all the right doctrines. You could quote scripture from memory, but you never let those words change you. I nodded. I couldn't deny it. You were more afraid of losing people's approval than of grieving my spirit. That hit me like a hammer. It was true. I had spent my entire life trying to look good in front of other people, trying to be seen as spiritual, trying to earn respect, trying to build a reputation. But I'd never stopped to ask what God actually thought of me. I'd never cared about grieving the Holy Spirit. I'd only cared about protecting my image. You built a life around my name, Jesus said, but you kept me at arm's length. You didn't want me to get too close, because if I got too close, I might ask you to change. I might ask you to give up the things you loved more than me. I buried my face in my hands. You called me Lord, but you never let me be Lord. Those words echoed in my soul. They were the same words he'd spoken earlier, but now they landed with even greater weight, because I finally understood what he meant. I had never truly surrendered. I had given God my Sundays. I had given him my tithes. I had given him my service, but I had never given him my heart. Lord, I said, my voice shaking, I don't know how to fix this. I don't know how to undo what I've done. There was a long silence, and then he knelt down beside me. Jesus, the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, the Creator of the universe, knelt down in the dirt beside me and looked me in the eyes. Daniel, he said softly, I have already paid for these sins. I stared at him, unable to speak. Every hidden thing, every secret shame, every wound you caused, every lie you told, every moment you chose yourself over me, I carried it all on the cross. His hand moved to my chest, right over my heart. My grace is greater than your hidden shame. I felt something break inside me, not in a painful way, in a freeing way. like chains I didn't even know I was wearing suddenly snapped and fell away. "But Lord," I said, my voice barely a whisper, "I wasted so much time, I hurt so many people. How can you still love me?" He smiled, a sad, gentle smile. "Because that's who I am." He stood and reached out his hand to help me up. I took it, and as he pulled me to my feet, I felt strength flood into me. Not physical strength, spiritual strength. The kind that comes from knowing you're fully seen and fully loved at the same time. "You're right," he said. "You did waste time. You did hurt people. But it's not too late." I looked at him confused. "What do you mean?" He turned and gestured toward the garden around us. The light, the river, the trees, the flowers, all of it still glowing with that impossible beauty. "This place is real, Daniel, and it's waiting for everyone who truly seeks me. But so many of my people, people like you, they think they're on the right path when they're not. They think going to church and knowing the Bible is enough. They think I don't see the things they hide." He looked back at me. "But I do see. I see everything. And I'm calling them to something deeper, something real." I nodded slowly, beginning to understand. "You're going to go back," he said. My heart sank. "No, Lord, please, I don't want to leave this place." He smiled again, but there was something firm in his expression now. "Your time is not finished." "But Lord, I finally understand. I finally see what I was doing wrong. I can stay here and worship you the way you deserve. I can—" He shook his head. "You can worship me by loving the people I've placed in your life, by being the husband you should have been, by being the father you should have been, by being the brother, the friend, the neighbor I called you to be." I felt tears welling up again, but for a different reason this time. "Go back," he said, "and tell my people that the little things matter." His voice grew stronger. "Tell them I see the quiet places of their hearts, the places they think no one else sees, the secret sins, the hidden bitterness, the buried pride. Tell them I see it all and I'm calling them to lay it down." He placed both hands on my shoulders now. "Tell them that small acts of love can change eternal destinies. Tell them that every word they speak, every thought they think, every choice they make, it all matters. Nothing is hidden from me." I nodded, unable to speak. "Tell them that I don't want their performance. I want their hearts. I want them to walk with me, not just talk about me." His eyes burned with intensity now. "Tell them that heaven is real, and so is hell, and the path they're on matters more than they realize." I swallowed hard. "Yes, Lord." He pulled me into an embrace, and in that moment I felt more loved than I'd ever felt in my entire life. More known, more accepted, more valued. "Go with my grace," he whispered in my ear. "And remember, I am always with you. Even when you can't feel me, even when you can't see me, I am there." He released me and stepped back. "I love you, Daniel. I always have. I always will." I wanted to say something. I wanted to thank him. I wanted to promise I'd do better. I wanted to tell him I'd never forget this moment. But before I could speak, he said one more thing. "You're going back now." And the moment he said those words, the garden started to fade. The garden began to fade. Not all at once, slowly. Like watching the sun set in reverse, the colors dimming, the light pulling back, the air growing thinner. The music that had filled everything, that glorious living sound that had vibrated through my entire being, it started to soften, to distant, like someone was turning down the volume on a song I never wanted to end. I reached out, trying to hold on to something, anything, but there was nothing to grasp. The trees, the flowers, the river, they were slipping away like mist through my fingers. "No," I whispered. "Please, not yet." But I was already moving, being pulled backward, away from the light, away from him. I felt like I was being drawn through a veil, a thin membrane between two worlds. And with every second, the world I was leaving became more beautiful, and the world I was returning to became more real. The golden light faded to white, then gray, then harsh and fluorescent. The warmth disappeared. I felt cold, so cold. The music was gone, replaced by beeping, steady, mechanical beeping. And then I felt it. Pain. Sharp, searing pain in my chest. My lungs burned. I couldn't breathe. I tried to suck in air, but it felt like something was crushing my ribcage, compressing it, squeezing the life out of me. And then I heard voices, muffled at first, distant, but growing louder. "Keep going, don't stop. Come on, Daniel, come back, come back." I felt pressure on my chest, rhythmic, brutal pressure. Someone was pushing down on my sternum with both hands, over and over, 30 times. A pause. A rush of air forced into my mouth, 30 times again. "We've got a pulse." The words were sharp, urgent. "He's back. We've got him." I tried to open my eyes, but they felt so heavy. My eyelids wouldn't cooperate. Everything was dark. Everything hurt. "Daniel, can you hear me? Daniel?" I wanted to answer. I wanted to say yes, but I couldn't. My throat was raw. My mouth was dry. I couldn't form words. And then I felt something else. A hand, soft and warm, gripping mine. "Daniel. Oh God, Daniel, please." It was Karen. I knew her voice. I'd heard it every day for 37 years, but I'd never heard it like this. Broken, desperate, terrified. I forced my eyes open, just a crack. The light was blinding, white and sterile and too bright. I blinked, trying to adjust, trying to focus. I saw her face above me. Her eyes were red and swollen, tears streaming down her cheeks. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. She looked exhausted. "You're back," she sobbed. "Thank God you're back." I tried to squeeze her hand, but I had no strength. My fingers barely moved. A doctor leaned over me, shining a light in my eyes, checking my pupils. "Mr. Hartley, you had a cardiac arrest. We've stabilized you for now, but we need to keep you under close observation. Do you understand?" I nodded, barely. The doctor said something else, but I couldn't hear him. My mind was still in two places at once. Part of me was here, in this cold, sterile hospital room, surrounded by machines and monitors and the smell of antiseptic. But part of me was still there, in the garden, with him. I closed my eyes again, and for a moment I could still see it. The colors, the light, his face. But it was fading, slipping away like a dream you try to hold on to when you wake up but can't. "Daniel?" Karen's voice pulled me back. I opened my eyes again. She was still holding my hand, still crying. But now she was smiling too, a shaky, relieved smile. "You scared me," she whispered. "You scared me so much." I wanted to tell her I was sorry. I wanted to tell her everything. But I couldn't. Not yet. My body was too weak. My mind was too fragmented. The hours that followed were a blur. Nurses coming and going. Doctors checking vitals. Machines beeping and whirring. Karen sitting beside me, never letting go of my hand. At some point, Tyler came into the room. My son. He looked older than I remembered, tired. His eyes were red, too. He stood at the foot of the bed, his arms crossed, his jaw tight. "Dad," he said quietly. I looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time in years I saw him. Not as a disappointment, not as someone I needed to fix, but as my son, my boy, the child I'd failed. Tears filled my eyes. He saw them and stepped closer, his expression softening. "I'm glad you're okay," he said. I nodded. I wanted to say so much more. I wanted to tell him I was sorry. I wanted to tell him I loved him. I wanted to tell him I'd seen what I'd done to him and that I was going to change. But all I could do was nod. He stayed for a few minutes and then he left. But before he walked out the door, he looked back at me one more time. And I saw something in his eyes. Something I hadn't seen in a long time. Hope. Over the next few days, I slowly regained my strength. My body started to heal. But my soul was in turmoil. I couldn't stop thinking about what I'd seen, what I'd felt, what Jesus had said to me. At night, when the room was quiet and Karen had gone home to sleep, I would lie there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment. The garden, the music, the light, the life review, the exposure of my sin, the weight of my failures, and then his words. "Go back and tell my people." I didn't want to be here. I wanted to be there, in the garden, in his presence, where everything made sense, where everything was beautiful. Here, everything was hard. Everything hurt. My body ached. My heart ached. The fluorescent lights were too bright. The hospital food was tasteless. The air was stale. Part of me was grateful to be alive, grateful to have another chance, grateful to see my wife and my son again. but part of me was devastated because I knew what I'd left behind. I knew what I'd lost, and I wasn't sure I could ever fully explain it to anyone. How do you describe a place that has no words? How do you explain a love that has no limits? How do you tell people about a beauty that makes everything on earth look like a shadow? On the third day, Karen was sitting beside me reading a magazine. The room was quiet except for the hum of the machines. I turned to look at her. "Karen," I said softly. She looked up, setting the magazine aside. "Yeah?" I took a breath. My throat was still sore from the breathing tube, but I needed to say this. "I saw him." She frowned, confused. "Saw who?" "Jesus." Her eyes widened. "When I died," I continued, "when my heart stopped, I wasn't just gone. I was somewhere. I was in heaven, and I saw him." She didn't say anything. She just stared at me, her mouth slightly open. "I know how that sounds," I said quickly. "I know you probably think it was just my brain shutting down or a hallucination or something, but it wasn't. It was real. More real than anything I've ever experienced." She set the magazine down on the chair and leaned forward, taking my hand. "What did you see?" she asked quietly. And for the first time I started to tell her. I told her about the garden, about the light, about the music, about the angel who guided me, about standing in front of Jesus and having my entire life laid bare before me. I told her about the sins I'd hidden, the ways I'd hurt her, the ways I'd failed Tyler, the pride, the lust, the anger, the hypocrisy. She listened without interrupting, tears running down her face. And when I finished, when I told her about Jesus kneeling beside me and telling me his grace was greater than my shame, she broke down. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I didn't know you were carrying all of that." "I didn't either," I said. "Not really. I thought I was fine. I thought I was doing everything right. But I wasn't. I was so blind, Karen, so blind." She squeezed my hand. "What did he say?" she asked. "When you saw him, what did he say to you?" I swallowed hard, my voice shaking. "He told me to come back. He told me to tell people that the little things matter, that he sees everything, that we can't hide from him, and that he wants our hearts, not just our performance." She nodded slowly, wiping her eyes. "Are you going to do it?" she asked. "Do what?" "Tell people." I looked down at our hands intertwined on the hospital bed. "I don't know if anyone will believe me." "I believe you," she said. I looked up at her, surprised. "You do?" She smiled through her tears. "Yeah, I do. Because the man lying in this bed right now, he's different than the man who collapsed 3 days ago. I can see it in your eyes." She was right. I was different. I thought the experience was the miracle. I thought seeing heaven, seeing Jesus, having my life reviewed, that was the miracle. But I had no idea the real miracle would be how my life would change after. I came home from the hospital 2 weeks later. Everything looked the same. The same street, the same house, the same furniture, the same walls I'd stared at for 27 years. But I wasn't the same. The first thing I did when I walked through the door was find Karen. She was in the kitchen putting away groceries. I stood in the doorway and watched her for a moment. This woman who'd stood by me for 37 years, who'd raised our kids, who'd endured my neglect and my pride and my emotional absence. And I started to cry. She turned around, startled. "Daniel, are you okay?" I shook my head. "No, I'm not okay." She set down the bag she was holding and walked over to me, concern written all over her face. "What's wrong? Is it your heart? Do we need to go back to the hospital?" "No," I said. "It's not my heart. Well, it is, but not the way you think." I took her hands in mine. "Karen, I need to say something, and I need you to let me finish before you say anything, okay?" She nodded slowly, her eyes searching mine. "I'm sorry," I said. "I'm so sorry for the way I've treated you, for all the years I put ministry before you, for all the times I turned our conversations into sermons, for all the nights I chose committee meetings over sitting with you, for all the ways I made you feel invisible." Her eyes filled with tears. "I thought I was doing the right thing," I continued. "I thought serving God meant being busy at church, but I was wrong. Serving God means loving you the way Christ loves the church, and I didn't do that. I failed you, and I'm sorry." She didn't say anything. She just stood there, tears streaming down her face. "I don't expect you to forgive me right away," I said. "I know I've hurt you for a long time, but I need you to know that I see it now, and I'm going to do better. I'm going to be the husband you deserve." She pulled me into a hug and sobbed into my shoulder. "I forgive you," she whispered. "I forgive you." We stood there in the kitchen, holding each other, crying together. And for the first time in years, I felt like we were actually connected, like we were actually one. That night I called Tyler. He answered on the third ring. "Hey, Dad." "Tyler, can we talk? In person?" There was a pause. "About what?" "About everything. About all the ways I've failed you. About all the things I should have said and didn't." Another pause. Longer this time. "Okay," he said finally. "I'll come over tomorrow." The next day he showed up at the house. We sat in the living room, just the two of us. Karen gave us space. I looked at my son. Really looked at him. He was 28 now, a grown man. But I could still see the boy he used to be. The boy who'd wanted his father's approval and never got it. "Tyler," I said, "I need to tell you something. And it's going to be hard for me to say, but I need to say it." He crossed his arms, waiting. "I'm sorry," I said. "I'm sorry I loved ministry more than I loved you. I'm sorry I turned every conversation into a lesson. I'm sorry I made you feel like you could never be good enough. I'm sorry I wasn't there for you when you needed me." His jaw tightened. He looked away. "I was so focused on being seen as a good Christian," I continued, "that I forgot to just be your dad. And that was wrong. You deserved better. You deserved a father who listened, who cared, who showed up. And I didn't do that." He didn't say anything for a long time. He just sat there staring at the floor. And then quietly he spoke. "I stopped going to church because of you." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. "I know," I said. "You made everything about rules and judgment and performance," he said, his voice shaking. "And I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't pretend to be perfect. So I just left." "I know," I said again, "and I don't blame you. I pushed you away. I made faith feel like a burden instead of a gift." He looked up at me, his eyes red. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I died," I said. "And when I died, I met Jesus. And he showed me who I really was. He showed me all the ways I'd hurt people, including you. And he told me to come back and make it right." Tyler stared at me, his expression unreadable. "I'm not asking you to come back to church," I said. "I'm not asking you to believe anything. I'm just asking you to give me a chance to be the father I should have been all along." He was quiet for a long moment, and then he nodded. "Okay," he said. "Okay." That was the beginning. Over the next few months, my life changed in ways I never thought possible. I stepped down from most of my positions at church. I told the pastor I needed to focus on my family. He understood. I stopped trying to look spiritual. I stopped performing. I stopped caring about what people thought of me. Instead, I started asking God a simple question every morning. "Lord, who can I love for you today?" Some days the answer was my wife, so I'd make her breakfast, or sit with her and just listen, or hold her hand while we watched TV. Some days the answer was my son, so I'd call him, or invite him over for dinner, or just send him a text to let him know I was thinking about him. Some days the answer was a neighbor, so I'd mow their lawn, or bring them groceries, or just stop by and ask how they were doing. I started noticing people I'd walked past for years. The homeless man outside the gas station, the single mom at church who always looked exhausted, the elderly couple down the street who never had visitors, and I started loving them. Not with sermons, not with Bible verses, just with presence, with kindness, with simple acts of service. I didn't post about it on social media. I didn't tell anyone at church. I just did it. Because that's what Jesus told me to do. Love them for me. And the more I did it, the more my heart changed. The more I felt alive. The more I felt like I was actually walking with God instead of just talking about him. A few months after I came home, the pastor asked me to share my testimony at church. I didn't want to at first. I was afraid people would think I was crazy. I was afraid they'd dismiss it as a hallucination or a dream. But Karen encouraged me. "People need to hear this," she said. "You need to tell them." So I did. I stood in front of the congregation on a Sunday morning and I told them everything. About the garden, about the light, about the life review. about standing before Jesus and having every hidden sin exposed. I told them about the ways I'd failed, the ways I'd hidden behind religion, the ways I'd used God's name to build my own kingdom. And I told them what Jesus said to me. He told me that the little things matter, that he sees the quiet places of our hearts, that we can't hide from him, and that he wants our hearts, not just our performance. The room was silent. And then, one by one, people started crying. Not everyone, but enough to know that the message had landed. After the service, people came up to me. Some thanked me, some hugged me, some confessed their own hidden sins through tears. One man, a deacon I'd served with for years, pulled me aside. "I needed to hear that," he said quietly. "I've been living the same way you were, and I didn't even realize it." I put my hand on his shoulder. "It's not too late," I said. "It's never too late." That's when I realized why I'd been sent back. Not to be famous, not to write a book or start a ministry or build a platform, but to tell the truth. To tell people that heaven is real, that Jesus is real, that judgment is real, but so is grace, so is mercy, so is love. So let me ask you something. Maybe you're like I was. Maybe you go to church every Sunday. Maybe you read your Bible. Maybe you serve on committees and sing in the choir and give your tithes. But maybe, deep down, you know something's not right. Maybe there are things you're hiding, little sins you've convinced yourself don't matter, bitterness you've buried, pride you've disguised as spirituality, relationships you've neglected in the name of ministry. Maybe you're performing for people instead of surrendering to God. If that's you, I want you to know something. He sees you. Not just the version of you that you show to the world. He sees the real you, the hidden you, the broken you, and he loves you. Not because of what you do, not because of how well you perform, but because you're his. He's calling your name, just like he called mine. And he's inviting you into something deeper, something real, something that goes beyond church attendance and Bible knowledge and good behavior. He's inviting you into a relationship, a real, honest, surrendered relationship where you don't have to hide anymore, where you can lay down the weight you've been carrying, where you can be fully seen and fully loved at the same time. I don't know where you are right now. I don't know what you're going through. I don't know what sins you're hiding or what pain you're carrying. But I know this. Jesus died for you. He rose for you. And he's waiting for you. Not someday. Not when you get your life together. Not when you're good enough. Right now. So if this story touched your heart, I want you to do something. Take a moment after this video and talk to God. Tell him the truth. Tell him about the things you've been hiding. Tell him about the ways you failed. Tell him you're tired of performing and you want something real. He's been waiting. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, someone who's been carrying the weight of hidden sin, someone who's been performing instead of surrendering, send this to them. Because the little things matter. And it's never too late to come home.